Ever wonder, like, why some societies in history just end up, kind of dominating everything? It's something I think about a lot, honestly.
Mm.
And with these excerpts from Guns, Germs and Steel by Jared Diamond, and Sapiens from Yuval Noah Harari, we're going to unpack this, but
Yeah.
it's deep.
Yeah, and it's easy to just be like, oh, some cultures were just, I don't know, stronger or whatever. But these books, they really don't let you off that easily. It gets uncomfortable. Seriously. Like Diamond, he's all about how it wasn't about being better, really, but about where you started. Like, think about it. Eurasia, right? All those early empires and stuff. Well, they had the Fertile Crescent. More food, more people, kind of spirals from there.
And that is where you get the whole guns, germs, and steel thing, literally. Diamond connects all that extra food straight to, like, making weapons, fighting off diseases because of livestock, even just who gets to be in charge. It all fits together.
Makes sense so far, right? But then Harari's like, hold on a second. Farming wasn't all sunshine and roses. More work, sometimes worse health at first, even more control from, the folks in charge. Not exactly the progress story we usually hear.
Totally. And that gets to something both these books make you think about. What is progress, really? Just fancier stuff, or is there more to it?
Oh, yeah, like the whole thing about which animals you could domesticate, depending on where you lived. Diamond points out how the Americas, they didn't have horses.
Yeah.
Huge deal when Europeans showed up later with all their cavalry and whatnot.
And it's not just horses. Diamond, he's got examples for days. Even the kind of crops mattered. Like wheat and barley, those were easy. Corn took forever to be actually useful. And that delay, man, that echoed for centuries.
So, like, the board was already set up in a way, just by where folks were thousands of years ago. Is it really that simple?
Not entirely, no. See, Diamond argues that ideas spreading, new tech, even how we write stuff down, that all played a huge part in who ended up, calling the shots.
And this is where it gets really interesting, right? Because Harari, he picks up on that, but with this whole imagined realities thing, we're talking money, empires, even the idea that some people are naturally at the top, not physical stuff, but powerful stuff.
Totally. And these imagined realities, they're not just sitting there. They change, they spread, they mix with the real world in all these crazy ways. It's wild.
So we've got geography, what plants and animals you got, tech, and these imagined realities, all shaping history. It's a lot. But it makes you wonder how it connects to us today, right? I mean, this is all so long ago.
You'd be surprised. And both these guys, they'd say these patterns are still going strong. But we'll get into that. It's like Diamond spends all this time on how geography shaped everything, right? But then Harari's like, what if tech just changes all the rules?
Okay, now you're speaking my language. But how? Get specific.
Well, Diamond, he's all about the limits geography puts on us, yeah. But what if, and this is where it gets wild, what if tech lets us get past those limits? Like, instead of us adapting to the planet, we engineer the planet to suit us.
Whoa, okay. Even with all this history stuff we've been talking about, that's getting a little sci-fi for me. Are we talking like terraforming planets now, designer babies? Where's the line?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And honestly, Harari, he's not pretending to know all the answers. It's more like he's saying, these are huge ideas, just try to wrap your head around them.
I could dig that. So he's putting these potential futures out there, but what's the logic? Why does he even think this way?
He uses, as like an example, the whole agriculture thing. That was huge, right? Changed how humans interacted with, well, everything. Harari argues we're on the edge of something even bigger, maybe even scarier, honestly.
So he's saying guns, germs, and steel is like totally valid for explaining the past, but going forward might not matter at all.
Kinda, yeah. Imagine, like, no more resource scarcity because we've engineered our way out of it. Or our own bodies, they're not even really a limit anymore. It changes everything.
Okay, that's both super cool and kind of terrifying, like
Yeah.
Black Mirror, but for real. Are we all going to end up slaves to our own tech, or is there like a good ending here where we use this power, for good?
Harari, he doesn't shy away from the downsides, not at all. He even uses this surprising example, sugar.
Wait, sugar? Like in my coffee? What's wrong with sugar?
It's not sugar itself, but what it represents. He talks about how sugar plantations, they basically drove the Atlantic slave trade, right? Not because anyone planned it that way, but just the demand for sugar in Europe. It's a whole thing about unintended consequences.
Well, puts things in perspective. So suddenly my morning donut doesn't feel so innocent.
That's Harari in a nutshell. Always making you question things. His point is, we gotta be really careful with all this power we've got, especially since we're still running on brains that evolved for, like, hunting and gathering, not all this crazy stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. Easy to get caught up in the cool new tech and forget that we're still, kind kind of messed up humans deep down. But he's not saying all technology is bad, is he?
No, not at all. Harari's all for the potential good stuff, curing diseases, solving big problems, even just understanding ourselves better.
Yep.
But he's really clear that the choices we're making right now, those are what decide if we get utopia or dystopia.
So are we like at a crossroads in history then?
That's one way to put it, yeah. We've got all this power, but, maybe not the wisdom to go with it.
It's like both Diamond and Harari are saying, hey, look at what's happened before. Learn from it, because things could go amazing or really badly.
Exactly. They both want us to, actually shape the future, not just let it happen to us.
It makes you think about, were there specific cultures that made better choices? What can we learn from that?
Timon gets into that, too. He talks about the Polynesian islands. Same origins, but they ended up so different depending on which island they were on. It's crazy.
He talked about the Moriori people, right? Those were the ones who got basically wiped out by the Maoris.
Yeah.
Even though they came from the same Polynesian ancestors. Yeah. What was up with that?
Yeah, so the Moriori, they're on these isolated islands, developed this super peaceful culture. The Maori, over in New Zealand, totally different story. Much more warlike when they met up.
Yeah, not good for the Moriori. Like a mini guns, germs, and steel playing out right there. The Maori, with their weapons and their, the way they thought about things, they were just built to win in that situation.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks, right? It shows how evolution, even for cultures, it doesn't always mean being nicer or more cooperative. Even within groups that seem similar, huge differences can pop up.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here, like where farming came from, empires, tech, changing everything. But if these patterns are so strong, what hope do we have of changing them? Are we doomed to just repeat all the same stuff?
Big question, right? And Diamond, he's definitely aware of how powerful these trends are, but he does give us some hope.
Ooh, tell me more.
He says that by understanding what shaped the past, we can make better choices now. He even uses the European Union as an example. These were rivals forever, right? And then they formed this whole new thing. It's hopeful.
So it's not all, pre-programmed. We actually get a say in how this goes.
Diamond would say so, yeah. But it takes effort. We got to fight against how things have always been done.
Okay, that's actually kind of reassuring.
Yeah.
But what about Harari? He always seems a bit more, cautious. Like he's not sure we can handle all this power we've got.
Yeah, he's definitely big on being cautious. He keeps reminding us our brains are still, wired for a world that doesn't exist anymore. Small groups, hunting and gathering, not this global tech-filled thing we've made. We're not naturally wise or good at planning long-term, and history is full of us messing up, even when we meant well.
He talks a lot about how even good stuff, like figuring out agriculture, it came with a whole bunch of bad stuff we didn't plan for, like inequality, messing up the environment, all that.
Exactly. And he's worried the same thing is happening now with all this new tech. We think we're building something better, but maybe we're creating even bigger problems for later on.
So what are we supposed to do? Just give up on progress? Go live in caves?
Harari's not saying we need to go full Stone Age or anything. He just wants us to, think things through. Be careful. Consider the consequences. He thinks we need new ways of thinking about ethics, new ways of running things that can keep up with how fast tech is changing.
So it's not just about what we can do, but what we should do. That's kind of easy to forget sometimes.
Totally. And that's where Diamond and Harari, even though they come at it differently, they actually agree. We got to be more aware of the forces shaping things and make conscious choices.
It's like they're both saying, look, we have this huge chance to decide how the future of humanity goes, but it's not going to happen by accident. We got to be smart, be wise, and work together. No pressure, right?
And maybe the biggest thing is just humility. We're not the first humans to think they had it all figured out.
Yeah.
And we've definitely screwed up before.
So the takeaway is, the future's not set in stone, but it's not a blank slate either. It's this whole messy mix of things that have always been true, choices we make, and just random stuff happening.
That's a great way to put it. And the only way to deal with all that is to stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.
Well, I think you've given our listeners a lot to think about today. But before we wrap things up, there's one more thing I want to touch on. These imagined realities Harari talks about. It's such a trip.
Oh, absolutely. It's easy to forget how powerful just ideas and stories can be. They shape how we act, how whole societies work.
It's wild, right? We've been going on about these huge forces in history, but this imagined realities thing, it always throws me off. Like
Yeah.
geography, tech, we can see that stuff, touch it, But beliefs, stories, it's all kind of invisible, yet it's powerful.
Totally. It's like we forget because it's so normal to us. Money, empires, religions, they only matter because we all agree they do. But that agreement, man, it's a powerful thing.
And not always for good. Like Harari, he's got all these examples of how these stories, they end up justifying some really messed up stuff throughout history. I mean,
Oh, yeah. Slavery, genocide, awful things done because someone believed in some imagined reality so strongly. It makes you realize we gotta be careful, right? What stories are we telling ourselves? What are they really based on?
it's a lot to think about.
Mhm.
We've got this weight of history, these unseen forces, the future's uncertain. But both Diamond and Harari, through these books, it's like they're giving us a way to deal with it all.
Yeah, and it starts with just realizing it's happening, knowing about these forces, the geography, the tech, even the stories we believe. That's how we get some control back. We're not just along for the ride.
So it's bigger than just being smart with tech.
Yeah.
Or having a good economy. It's like
Yeah.
questioning what we assume is true, trying to see things in new ways, all that.
Exactly. It's realizing we have a say in how this all turns out. The future's not set in stone, It's made up of the choices we make every day, all of us together.
Man, this deep dive, it's been a wild one. Makes you realize how much we take for granted, how we got here because of choices people made way back when. And now it's our turn to make choices that shape things for whoever comes after us. No pressure.
It's a big deal, but it's also like a huge opportunity. If we got to wrap this up, I'm feeling honestly cautious, but hopeful too. We've seen how badly things can go for sure. But we can learn from that and make it better.
I think that's the perfect place to end things. Kind of blown away by how huge history is, but also, I don't know, fired up. Like, this is our time to make a difference.
Absolutely. We're not just inheriting the past, we're building the future. Right now, with every choice we make, the story's still being written.